Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to my art journal video. Today I'm painting lavender with mixed media. And I did start off with old paintings or test paintings, drawings that I did, and just ripped the paper and glued it down with gel medium to use the backside. So I have this craft color and a creamish white color. And I'm just gluing down all of those, pieces. They're not even rectangles, but pieces, and they will later help me to form the stone wall. So I wanted to have kind of like a cobblestone wall, rough, uneven kind of thing going on. And I didn't just want to paint it, so I decided having those paper pieces be the size and the form, like the shape of the stones, and have it be since I ripped the paper just, without any rhyme or reason, have it be kind of, unplanned. So once that was dry, I did take some pebble gray and Van Dyke brown and did color a solid layer for all of those stones here. So the white paper gets the cream or pebble gray color. The brown paper gets the mixed color, so Van Dyke brown and pebble gray. And then I'm going in with Van Dyke brown only and start outlining and shading. The real big shading will be done way later with charcoal and chalk, but I still wanted to have somewhat of a cohesive shadow already going on just to help me build my scene here. And then I painted in this solid line, which could be either a board, like a 2x4, or like the armrest of a chair, and you have kind of like a macro shot of it. It depends what you are going to see. I see a 2x4 or like a board that is, somewhat detached or attached, I should say, attached to the stone wall, and has kind of like a rustic feel. So I went for colors and for texture as I wanted to achieve them in any kind of country, rustic, Provence, South France, northern Italy, northern Spain kind of a feel. So I did have very vintage and aged things. Also decided to use the colors like that, and used a lot of brown and grays that you see in the houses in that area. Now, what I wanted to focus on is actually the lavender that I'm going to paint here. And I did slow this down to real time because I want to talk to you a bit about how I like to paint flowers or vegetables or fruits, like natural things that we find in a late summer, early autumn harvest season, and how I, painted to have a very rough and very rustic texture like I wanted to achieve here. So one thing that is very important to me is have not a lot of water. So I used the same purple gray that I also used for the background and added phthalo green, mixing those two for the stems of the lavender. And I'm having a dry brush that is super stiff. It's not even very stiff, it's super stiff. Could also paint this with a palette knife, would work awesomely well. And I'm just going over the sections where I want the stems to be, and I want this to be like a tiny bundle of lavender. So I'm having the rough shape of a bow tie now. The end parts of the stems closer to the bottom of the screen, and the upper parts where the blossoms then will form kind of like a sand clock bow tie kind of shape. You know what I mean, right? So I added a teeny tiny bit of Van Dyke brown to my green pebble gray mixture just to have a tiny bit of a shadow going on. Like I said earlier, the major shadow will come later with another medium, but I want to have a bit of color variation in there and also color repetition, having the same brown in the foreground as in the background, for example, the wood and the stones being the background here. And then I took another brush that is more on the softer side, but not so soft that I cannot control it and the hair goes everywhere. So when this brush is dry, it has the shape of like an A skirt. You know, it's almost like a skirt. It's a very old brush, and I keep those brushes that I used for other things before, like for glues or for gel mediums. I keep those brushes, and the more texture and the more stiffness they get, the more I can use them for natural things like flowers, grass, leaves, tree bark, snowflakes, anything like that. So you see, I'm just dabbing here, and I get the texture of lavender or of these tiny little blossoms. So I went in with with mixing white first, and then having the lilac on top. I'm not having titanium white, that is, in this painting. That was another painting of the week, and you will hear me say that later in a video this week that I did use titanium white. But for this one, it's actually mixing white. So I'm going on top with the lilac, but I don't care if I cover up the mixing white at all or not. And since the color is kind of wet, sometimes it mixes a bit, sometimes it doesn't. And that makes for a nice difference and shading already without me having a lot of things to do. Again, I add a tiny bit of Van Dyke brown, so I get something of a mauve color, and I go in these shadowy places and dab that in there, just again to have a few of those blossoms of the lavender look darker, have a natural shadow already before I go in with the heavy shadows later on. And it's just dabbing, 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 dabbing. And the eye makes for the rest. It composes the rest of the painting, meaning that it sees all the tiny little blossoms of the lavender, and it sees it with a green and says, oh yeah, that's lavender, very much so. So the brain does the rest. I don't have to write lavender next to it for you to see it as the viewer. Then I just took the same color that I already had on my brush, so lilac white and a tiny bit of brown, added a bit more brown, and then painted that band or string, whatever that holds the lavender together in a bundle here. And then I'm standing up because having a bit of a height or just a different kind of a perspective helps me to see, okay, where do I need to add something and where am I good to go? Because sitting and having, well, not a straight on look at the painting can distort things. So I like to stand up in the end and check and then sit down. So once that was dry, I did take charcoal and I shaded the whole lower part of the lavenders and all the cobblestones, like the edges of it. I'm going to slow down in a second here again, but this is pretty much the same thing that I'm going to do with white in just a second here. So once I had the black in, I'm just rubbing the charcoal and having it very smoothly blend out or have gradient blending going on top of the acrylics. When I am done with that, I can go on with just white chalk. And this is usual school chalk that my teachers did back in the day on the chalkboard in school. It's nothing fancy, but I really love it in mixed media, and a bit of white and black, and that's all I need. So I'm putting in highlights where I think I need them. So I'm dabbing the charcoal and not smoothing it out with my finger for the blossoms. And I'm smoothing it out for the stems, or now for the board here, where I give it more of a 3D effect and more of a, well, side view of the board to look at. Also having a few highlights on some parts of the stones in the background, just to have, well, where there's a shadow, there's usually a highlight somewhere close by. So I'm just adding those, smudging them. They're not too obvious. They're definitely obvious on the lavender, but in the stones and on the background there, they blend in nicely. And that is what I like about charcoal or chalk, when you put it as a shading tool or a shading medium on top of acrylics. You don't need a ton of color in the acrylics. You just have basic shading going on and have the soft shading be added with the charcoal or the chalk. And I really like that. It makes for a very smooth and a very soft look in the end. You don't have any harsh lines. And you have a very gradient highlight or shadow going on, which I like a lot. And I use that to my advantage in mixed media pages with acrylics underneath. Quite often, actually. There's definitely times that I don't want to work with the chalk or the charcoal, but most times I really want to go back to that combination of media to have, well, it worked to my benefit, especially if I don't want to have a comic-y style, but more a natural kind of a style, but not photorealism either. I still want to have an impressionism, but more on the verge of a realistic kind of a painting. And then I'm just going back and forth and see where I need to add something. Sometimes it's a bit of charcoal for the shading. Sometimes it's a bit of chalk, white chalk for the highlights. And I'm just, again, standing up and checking my whole painting where it needs to go and where I can leave it. And once that is done, once I have everything down that I need, I will have a solid layer of fixative spray on top that makes sure that the charcoal and the chalk do not smudge when I, shut this book or flip through the pages. And then I'm done. I hope you enjoyed watching along. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. There will be lots of photos, the background story on what inspired me to paint the lavender, and a material list will be on my blog on Friday this week. Just as per usual, every Friday there's a new blog post with all the artwork that I published that week, and I tell you stories there on what inspires, what I see in a painting, what I wanted to do, stuff like that. That is less on the technical side, which I cover in this video. These videos here. So have fun, everybody. I thank you very much. Do all the good YouTube stuff, which means giving this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Share it with your friend if you want them to see this, or subscribe to the channel if you're new. And in case you're new, welcome. And in case you came back, welcome back. Have fun, everybody. Have a lovely, lovely day. Go create and enjoy your time. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.